almost 30% of pensioners are millionaires.
This is what
okay? But can I just point out...
That is nonsense, Benjamin.
If Rishi...
They have a house that may be worth close to £1 million. It does not make them a millionaire.
I'd choose that.
So what should they do?
Just to be clear, I'll take a house worth £1 million and I'll pay my own...
money to be able to buy a house, so stop it.
Not £1 million house.
I understand the point, though, if I may.
And if sell the home they're in, should they sell the home they're in?
Yes, they should.
Live in a little house.
A house appropriate size.
Yes. There we have it.
Yes, they should.
Socialism Britain. You'll be moved out of your house because you live in too big a house. The point is with pensioners, they're on a fixed income, which is a pension, whether that's the state pension or a private pension. They have no ability to increase that fixed income, and that's why things like fuel price inflation hits them the most. And that's why the Labour government, introduced the winter fuel payment, non-mean tested in the first place, because pensioners cannot increase their income because they're on a fixed income.
The state of the financial well-being of pensioners is radically different to what it was 20 or 25 years ago.
No, it is not.
It is, because you see that in...
Do you know there are 2 million
You weren't around in World War II, but I'm sure you still talk about that.
There are 2 million pensioners in this country that depend on the state pension alone, nothing else. And do you know how much that is a month, Benjamin? Have you any idea? It's probably what you'd spend on a weekend out. It's 750, 800 quid.
Boomers in this country
get for a month, and never mind boomers.
Boomers in this country have had a better deal than anybody else. And what Keir Starmer understands is that you cannot have a country that gives money to people that have paid off their mortgages, that have comfortable lives. Meanwhile, MPs vote on the budget, and it's obviously a part of that. So it does get a vote. And just to say, if Rishi Sunak's wife wants to give back the 20 million quid it's thought she benefited from being non-domicile, then when she does that, I'm sure Keir will pay some tax.
She did voluntarily pay tax. Why doesn't Keir Starmer
by about 20 million
give up his tax-free, gold-plated pension in the state, while he is ripping the winter fuel oil?
Well, let's check your voting record and see if you voted for it.
Why won't he allow a vote on the winter fuel allowance?
Benjamin.
No, it was a...
Why won't he allow a vote on the winter fuel allowance?
Because he's a
coward. Well, if he did, he'd win it.
Because he knows he's wrong.
No, he's a coward.
Well, on that note, everybody, we'll put a pin in it. Everybody has had their Weetabix this weekend, and they've come in raring to go, which you love to see. But coming up... And the youth vote has propelled Germany's right-wing AfD party to a historic state election victory. But what's behind their rise and their popularity amongst the young? And really, just to localise it, what we're seeing as well there, really, I think, is the ignoring of people's views on immigration and on illegal immigration. So it's not just us over here where that's happening, is it? Assistant online editor at The Spectator, Lisa Hazeldine, who has been on the ground in Germany, reveals all. Plus, James Coverley wants his small boats deterrent back.
I will use my contacts and my reputation with Rwanda to resurrect that incredibly important partnership.
The right move, that, do we think, bringing back Rwanda? We'll debate that. But up next, as Labour are accused of dodging scrutiny, should there be a vote in Parliament on the government's plan to axe the winter fuel allowance? Director of Silver Voices, Dennis Reed, goes head-to-head with political commentator Andy Williams. It's live and it's next.
GBNews Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Fatima's UK campaign, Children and Young People Matter, because I actually run a campaign, and my ministry today is about looking after children in the care system and improving their life outcomes. For me, I had a difficult start to my childhood, and I will never forget it. I mean, I always say I may have left the care system, but the care system hasn't left me. And I instantly understand the importance of giving our young children and young people the opportunity to also, have good life outcomes. So Fatima's UK campaign is all about that. And it's a summit next year. Eamon, I hope you're going to come.
No, and we've talked about this before, and certainly, I mean, I believe in what you're doing. I think it's marvellous what you're doing, and that's why, when you think about children, and children are so close to you, and you look at that horror that happened in Southport yesterday, I mean, things like that
exactly.
will really hit home hard.
Well, children are the innocent ones, aren't they, Eamon? And this is what we look at when you think they're the future. We've got to start to put them back at the top. And it's a travesty when we see things like that, you know, Omar, that happen. You know, children are the ones that are impacted. And, you know, it's, for me, you know, really important to be able to do the best we can and looking after their future. And so hopefully, you know, I'm going to the Pyrenees in September, Eamon. That's my next challenge, the Bay of Biscay from France to Spain and back. And hopefully people can go online, fabulous.campaign.com, and give generously to help make a difference to these young people's lives. Because, as I say, children are the future.
Yeah. GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Hey!
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tune in to Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. GB News royalty with your perfect start to the weekend. Lucky us! Feisty and fearless guests.
Well, I'm a normal person, so ask me.
Honest opinions that raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return. And a few surprises along the way. Might be cold in this studio. That is Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. 8 to 9, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. Now, coming up, Kelvin McKenzie tackles the Downing Street cronyism scandal. But first, should there be a parliamentary vote on Labour's plan to axe the winter fuel allowance? It's time for that to head. So, the Labour government appears to be attempting to avoid scrutiny over its plans to effectively axe the winter fuel allowance for 10 million pensioners. The Tories and Liberal Democrats are pushing for a parliamentary vote this week, but a government source said ministers would reject any calls to scrutinise the measure. It's worth noting, actually, that a Labour MP has also called for one now, but Prime Minister Keir Starmer again defended his government's plans to scale back the £300 payments today.
I don't want to cut the winter fuel allowance. I don't think anybody government wants to do that. But we've got to fix the foundations of our economy. And that's what this is all about, making sure that we fix the foundations. And then, having done that, that we can build the better future that pensioners and so many other people voted for in this election. So this is a tough decision. Not a decision I want to make, but I'm absolutely determined. We'll stabilise the economy and fix the foundations. And then on that, we will build the better Britain that we were elected into government with a strong mandate to bring about.
He did want to borrow £3.1 million, though, £2 billion even, a couple of months ago, didn't he, just to pay off the unions? But anyway, should there be a parliamentary vote on Labour's plan to scale back the winter fuel allowance? Going head-to-head on this now, the director of Silver Voices, Dennis Reed, and political commentator Andy Williams. Both of you, thank you very, very much. Dennis, you know, no one voted for this. It wasn't in the manifesto. They must have known they were going to do it, though. Is this not worthwhile of a parliamentary vote, do you think?
Well, absolutely, there should be a parliamentary vote on this. It will be a travesty if this goes through by regulations, without any parliamentary debate on it at all. As you said, Patrick, it wasn't in the Labour manifesto. There was no mention of it at all during the general election campaign, and yet they must have planned this well in advance. Once they got the Treasury figures before the election, they must have known in advance what they were going to do. You don't suddenly dream something like this up. A major policy issue like this, you don't dream it up in the first 2 weeks of a new parliament. So yes, the wool was pulled over our eyes as far as this was concerned. We are where we are, and there does need to be a parliamentary debate. There is a lot of public concern about this, whatever you think. There's a lot of concern about it from MPs across all parties, quite rightly. And certainly pensioners themselves are extremely angry that they're being the ones who are being set up as the fall guys, if you like, for the economy. Basically, Labour seem to be saying, unless we did this, we removed this payment from 10 million pensioners, the economy would have tanked, which is complete rubbish. Everybody knows that.
Well, I'll come back to you, Dennis. Just, Andy, I'll bring you in now, political commentator Andy Williams. Yeah, a couple of points there. So Neil Duncan Jordan, who is the Labour MP for Poole, is tabling a motion on this. He wants it discussed in Parliament. Also, Labour are just lying about it, aren't they? The idea that there'd be a run on the pound if we didn't take 300 quid off vulnerable pensioners this winter is a lie, isn't it?
So I don't like that language. I don't think it's credible that there would be a run on the pound if we didn't do this, but I otherwise completely disagree with Dennis, I'm afraid. Firstly, this is not something that was planned or that was wanted by the Labour Party in the run-up to the election. There was a black hole in terms of the finances that was found. Whether or not you quibble with the £22 billion figure, the reality is there was that black hole, and that was a legacy of the previous government. The OBR has made that clear. That's a fact. Secondly, when it comes to the vote, if you're a Labour MP who is calling for there to be a debate about this because you disagree with the government, you should have the whip suspended. I am hugely in favour of the Labour leadership taking a really hard line on this. It's government policy, it's a financial motion, it's important to the health of the economy, and we can't have hard left.
What about the health of old people, though, Andy? You know, I'm looking at Neil Duncan Jordan here, and I don't mean him any ill will whatsoever, but I would take a stab at it that he might be relatively near pension age himself, you know, and you're saying that you should have the whip removed as well as his winter fuel allowance. Have Labour got a problem with old people?
No, obviously not, but let's be clear about this. Elderly people, older people, have been more protected than any other age demographic in society over the last 15 years. That is an absolute fact. If you look at austerity, if you look at the entire history of the coalition and then the Conservative government, working people were asked to tighten their belts time and time again. Businesses were asked to tighten their belts. Students had their tuition fees trebled. Now, you may disagree or agree with any of those things, but pensioners were never asked to pay a penny more. There was the triple lock again and again. Every year, pension went up with inflation. They've been completely protected. And I'm afraid it's about time that pensioners paid their way as well. Now, that is not to say that pensioners at the lower end of the income spectrum should suffer for this, and they're not going to. They will be protected. But even Age UK said, well-off older people will scarcely notice the difference with this. That's a social injustice. Age UK agree that means testing is the right way forward.
All right, OK. Dennis, well, just come back to that then. So, I mean, if Age UK are on side with what Sir Keir Starmer's doing, I suppose we don't need a vote in Parliament on it.
I never saw that quote from them. I've seen lots of other quotes from Age UK really strongly objecting to these proposals. And it's nonsense what Andy says about cosseted older people over the last 10 years. We were simply righting the wrongs of increased pensioner poverty with the triple lock. And in fact, a benefit was withdrawn. A universal benefit was withdrawn by the last Tory government, which was free TV licences for the over 75s. That was withdrawn. It's not all gone older people's way. Now, this argument about wealthy pensioners, there's 2 points on this. Firstly, we're not talking about wealthy pensioners when we talk about the 2 million people just above the pension credit limit who are going to lose their whole winter fuel allowance. Those people are on just over £218 per week. That's why this policy is so cruel, and it will send so many people into fuel poverty this winter and will increase excess deaths as well. Now, if they do want to do something about the very, very wealthy pensioners, then they need to bring in a cut-off point which targets them, not 10 million people who can not afford to lose that winter fuel allowance, or most of them. For example, they could bring in a limit at the level of the higher rate of tax. That would really show that they are targeting the very wealthy pensioners.
All right, Andy, the reason why you know, I'm kind of coming down on the side of the fact there probably should be a vote on it, is that if the Tories had introduced it, Labour would be absolutely hammering them. We know that because Keir Starmer did do just that. We also know that they probably recognise that it's quite unpopular because they did not put it in the manifesto, and it's obviously up to individuals at home if they choose to decide whether or not they didn't include this in the manifesto because they realised that people wouldn't have voted for it, or whether because there was this black hole. But if the shoe was on the other foot, you would be calling for this to go to Parliament, wouldn't you?
Look, I'm ambivalent about whether or not there's a vote in Parliament. I think if people want to vote, that's fine. It's irrelevant. I'm interested in the policy, and whether it was Labour, Conservative, Reform, Lib Dem, Green, any other party, I don't believe that wealthy pensioners, and I'm not saying that all pensioners are wealthy, let's be really clear about that, but it is not the case that all 10 million people who are losing this benefit needed that money. They absolutely didn't. And Dennis mentions free TV licences for the over 75s. I mean, I can't think of a bigger waste of public money than that. It's just an absolute nonsense. Universal benefits are wrong, almost full stop, with a few exceptions that we don't have time to go into. That we need to we don't have an infinite pool of money. We need to means test. Now, we probably do need to look at those on the margins and making sure that people are appropriately compensated.
Yeah, but he isn't, is he? But this is the point, Andy. You see, this is the point. He isn't doing that, is he? And if it went to Parliament, it would expose deep cracks within the Labour Party. And he's let his stall out, hasn't he, and said he will suspend the whip for anyone who really disagrees with anything that he has to say. So he'd have to biff the whip for a load of people, which he couldn't do. And if it did go to Parliament, Andy, we could maybe come up with some kind of compromise like the one you've suggested, or like the one Dennis has suggested, where everybody would be happy, where people could think, well, those extra 2 million people might be able to get a little bit of financial help with it. It wouldn't be quite as black and white, but he won't do that, Andy. Why won't he do that?
Because we're really early on in the Labour government. They've secured a huge majority, deservedly so. They got a massive vote, and a huge majority. And actually, then this is the time to show some authority. Now, I'm saying I think there should be a bit of compromise. I do think there needs to be a bit of flex here and more thinking done about those people on the margins. Whether there's a vote or not, I'm not bothered. But the policy, I totally back.
OK, Dennis, very quickly, very quickly. Do you actually think old people will die this winter as a result of this policy?
Well, yes, they will, because there's always excess deaths due to cold, and there'll be more this winter. There's no question about that. But just to a point on means testing, the problem with means testing on these things is, first of all, there's large admin costs. Secondly, there's a huge cliff edge. So wherever the cut-off point is, there is a cliff edge. So, and thirdly, a lot of older people don't want to claim benefits, which is why they have universal payments, but they don't want to claim benefits, so they don't claim pension credit.
There is a big stigma around that. Anyway, look, both of you, obviously we could carry this on, and thanks to Keir Starmer, we're going to get the opportunity to in the coming weeks, probably. But thank you very much. That's the director of Silver Voice there, Dennis Reid, political commentator Andy Williams. Both of you really appreciate it, so thank you. Who do you agree with? Should there be a parliamentary vote on Labour's plan to scale back the winter fuel allowance? Alex says absolutely. It was a complete disgrace to cancel it for 10 million pensioners, and hopefully a majority of MPs can recognise that. Alison says, being a pensioner myself, what's the point? Labour have a huge majority, there's nothing we can do. Alison, I hear what you're having to say there, and I understand, but I think there will be a massive split in the Labour Party over this, namely because a lot of people in the Labour Party think that they should pay for everything all the time. So why wouldn't they think that they should be paying more for pensioners? Linda says Labour won't hold one. There are still enough Labour MPs with the genuine socialist values to vote against it. There you go. Or at least for amendments. If they combine with other parties, they might even stop it. Linda, I think you're spot on. And your verdict is now in. 95% of you think that there should be a vote. 5% of you say no, there should not. Coming up, Foreign Secretary David Lammy turns the screw on Britain's ally, Israel.
There are certain UK arms exports to Israel. There does exist a clear risk that they might be used to commit or facilitate a serious violation of international humanitarian law.
Well, David Lammy's just played an absolute blinder there, because in the last few moments the United States have come out and said they feel incredibly let down by his decision to do that. Did he consult them? Is a partial ban on arms sales to Israel a shocking betrayal of one of Britain's only allies in the Middle East? I know which side I'd rather be on in that region. Former editor of The Sun, Kelvin Mackenzie, tackles that and the scandal surrounding Labour's accidental slum landlord. Have you heard about this story? If not, I'll bring it to you. Hilarious stuff. But next, as the youth vote propels Germany's AfD party to a historic state election victory, what's behind their rise in their popularity among the young? And should Starmer sit up and finally pay attention? Assistant online editor at The Spectator, Lita Hazeldine, has been on the ground in Germany. She's live and she's next.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. We've seen some big thunderstorms through the day today. Still a few rumbling on at the moment, but they are going to fade overnight. Tomorrow, a mix of sunshine and showers, and it is steadily turning fresher from the west. Quite warm and humid, though, in places at the moment. Our air is coming up from the south. This low pressure generating the heavy, thundery showers, steadily clearing from northeast Scotland and then the Northern Isles. But some storms rumbling on well into this evening over parts of the Midlands, Northern England and Wales. They should start to ease through the early hours. Still quite warm and humid and murky over central and eastern parts, but turning fresher and cooler further north and west. Temperatures in parts of Scotland well down into single figures. Generally a fine and a sunny start across Scotland tomorrow as well. Certainly a much brighter, drier day across the northeast. But in western Scotland, a line of cloud and rain is creeping back in. That's extending down into Northern Ireland, so a pretty glum start to proceedings tomorrow here. Quite a lot of mist and low clouds still across parts of England and Wales as well, and still a few showers here, still keeping going through the morning, so you may wake up to a bit of a wet start here. And as we go through the day, we could see some further heavy showers developing over parts of East Anglia and maybe the far southeast of England. Still hit and miss, but some heavy downpours possible, particularly in the early afternoon. Much of northern England, Wales, southwest England, though, drier and brighter compared to today. And we'll still have some outbreaks of rain coming into the far northwest. Turning cooler and fresher, we could still get into the 20s across East Anglia and the southeast. And certainly a cooler, fresher start across eastern areas for Wednesday morning. Again, many places seeing plenty of sunny spells, but we will see more showers developing as we go through the day, particularly for Wales and England, Northern Ireland. Not too many, though, across Scotland. And temperatures much fresher feel by Wednesday, high teens for most.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQs live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQs live here on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment. This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory. Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark Meets and My Take at 10. Democracy is a funny old thing. And we don't do boring. Not on my watch. I just won't have it. Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it. That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
All right, welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. Now, Germany's anti-immigration Alternative for Germany party, the AfD, is celebrating a historic success after it landed a big victory in the country's state elections. So the AfD won almost a third of the vote in the eastern state of Thuringia, miles ahead of Germany's three governing parties, and came a close second in neighbouring Saxony as well. Now, the youth vote had a lot to do with their success. So 38% of 18 to 24-year-olds voted for the AfD in Thuringia, while 31% did the same in Saxony. It's astonishing numbers, this, isn't it? And approximately 1 in 3 Germans under the age of 34 voted for the AfD. I mean, that is really, you know, a significant number of people for that age group. So, what's behind their rising success, particularly amongst young Germans? I'm very pleased to be joined by The Spectator's assistant online editor, Lisa Hazelden. Lisa, thank you very much for joining us. So now, you spent a bit of time over there. Astonishing numbers amongst the youth. I am also seeing a lot, this is anecdotal, but, online, of, there's a song with a particular lyric that does the rounds. It seems to be quite popular in German nightclubs, etc., which it also loosely translates as foreigners out. Why is there this rise amongst young people voting for, really the right wing?
I think there are several reasons for it. I think, firstly, there are sort of cost of living pressures that are quite similar to what we're seeing here in the UK, sort of a housing crisis. It's becoming harder to live in Germany, sort of affordability-wise. That is obviously affecting young people, perhaps a little bit more than older people. Then there's also just the fact that the AfD has been really good at targeting young people on social media. So they have got leaps and bounds more followers on platforms like TikTok than any of the other sort of major parties. And this cohort of voters, the 18 to 24-year-olds in particular, a lot of them are probably people who haven't voted before, so they're ripe for the taking, that they're just fertile ground for a new party to come in and seduce. Yeah, indeed. And you see the likes of Keir Starmer going over to Germany, standing next to Olaf Scholz and saying, the solution to this is that we all need to be more progressive. And then I wonder whether or not young Germans, especially young Brits as well, we look around and think, well, actually, hang on a minute. If the progressives not got us into this mess, I can't afford a house, or tax bills are going up, etc., it's easy to blame immigration on that, maybe. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a narrative that the AfD have capitalised on. In 2015, when Angela Merkel's migration policy allowed 1.3, I think it was just under 1.3 million asylum seekers into the country in one go. I think you can debate whether or not it's a good thing to have allowed this number of people into the country, but the facts are that clearly the infrastructure of the country can't cope. And that is something that the AfD has massively capitalised on. I think there are, of course, parallels in that sense with, the debate around migration that we're having in the UK, but I do think that there's quite a different... I think there are different factors underneath it. I think the number of migrants that came into Germany in that timescale is way bigger than what we've had. But also, I think it's also just to do with the fact that the government, both here and in Germany, hasn't been doing enough to stimulate the economy, to get jobs going, to make it easier for young people to get on the housing ladder, all those sorts of things that really has nothing to do with migrants on sort of directly. It's just that parties like the AfD make it very easy to, attach the blame to them. Yeah, no, I do think as well, when you look at the political class, the quote-unquote kind of ruling elites, as it were, and their response to things like the AfD, we had a little whiff of that, I would argue, over Brexit. It was this big push to overturn the result of the referendum and, what have these stupid people done who voted for this thing? And now we're seeing it in Germany with Olaf Scholz saying we need to put a firewall up around the AfD. Well, they've conceivably got, I'm not sure of the exact number, but, significant numbers of people voting for them. And if every single other party refuses to work with them to the point where they cannot get into a position of power, what does that do? I would argue that it solidifies their support. It makes the problem worse if you think the AfD are a problem. Yeah, that's right. And I think that's very, very likely to happen because now, as you say, they're in this period where they're going to be trying to convince another party to go into coalition with them. So far, it doesn't seem like any other party is willing to do that. So it's probably going to be the CDU, the party that came in second place, who will try and form a coalition instead. And, yeah, I totally agree. I think this is going to be a narrative that runs on into Germany's election campaign next year for their general election. And I think it's going to be something that the AfD is really going to milk, essentially, and say, look, we were denied the rightful result. We should have been in power. Help us make sure this doesn't happen again. So I think they're going to be causing a lot of trouble. Just with one eye on the future then, can you envisage a future where the AfD are the largest party in Germany? I don't think so. I think we're some way off that. I think there is a potential future where the AfD is quite a sort of powerful opposition party. But I think we're some way off them actually being the largest party. I think particularly Germany, with its history, has enough safeguards in place at the moment that wouldn't be the case.
Yeah, I mean, it is absolutely fascinating to watch what's going on over there and the parallels that we've got here. And at the top of my 10 o'clock hour, I'm going to be having quite a big conversation about whether or not the Labour Party here are deliberately ignoring and demonising people, really, over there. Quite legitimate concerns, I think, on immigration. But we'll watch this space when it comes to Germany. Lisa, thank you very much. Great to have you on the show. It's Lisa Hazeldown there, who is the Spectator's assistant online editor. Look, coming up, as Yvette Cooper, again, brands the riots racist. When will Labour accept immigration is a massive concern for millions of Brits and actually do something about it. I tackle the left's extremist shutdown of debate at 10. Plus, stranded astronauts hear a strange noise in space.
There's a strange noise coming through the speaker.
That's absolutely terrifying, isn't it? I'll explain exactly what that's about shortly. But next, is David Lammy's suspensions of some arms sales to Israel a complete betrayal of one of our only allies in the Middle East? Former editor of The Sun, Calvin Mackenzie, he gives Lammy and Labour both barrels, and he's next.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
A window cleaner is battling to prove he has the only portrait of William Shakespeare made in his lifetime.
Yes, so owner Stephen Wadlow has been trying to validate the painting for years. He's had it x-rayed, he's had it analysed by experts, he's had it scientifically dated back to 1595 when the playwright was 31 years old. If it is the Bard, it could be worth north of £200 million.
Steve, welcome to GB News. First of all, just explain how you came to have this painting in your possession.
It was sat there all my lifetime, sort of thing, while I was growing up, above the television in the corner. It was only back about 12 years ago that a visitor, she said, "Oh, I think it looks like William Shakespeare, you know, I like your copy of William Shakespeare," and was shocked to see it was an original painting. So it was only then that I started researching, and the different institutions have helped with the x-rays and all the rest of it. But then, is it actually Shakespeare? Well, all the facial comparisons, technology, everything like that, all matches with the Droschau, which is the only known 2D image of Shakespeare. And who do you go to find that out?
There's a suggestion in the Sun's write-up of this story that you've been struggling to be heard in the academic world, the lofty art world. It's all a bit snooty. Yes. It's about who you know, and you're a tradesman.
Yes, yes. That is definitely true in some avenues, but then I have to say, and it's lovely to be able to have this opportunity to say it, there's other people in that world that have been fabulous. It's taken a long time to sort of get listened to. We want the discussion out there because all the evidence that we've got indicates that this really should be discussed.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
OK, welcome back. So Foreign Secretary David Lammy has hardly endeared himself to Israel, or as it turns out, America, actually, since taking his post. But he threatened relations even further by announcing this today.
Certain UK arms exports to Israel, there does exist a clear risk that they might be used to commit or facilitate a serious violation of international humanitarian law. I have informed my Right Honourable friend, the Business and Trade Secretary, and he is therefore today announcing the suspension of around 30 from a total of approximately 350. These include equipment that we assess is for use in the current conflict in Gaza.
Well, I'm joined now by the former editor of The Sun, Kelvin Mackenzie. Kelvin, what do you make of David Lammy's decision here?
Well, I don't know whether it's Lammy's decision or Starmer's decision, but it's an absolute disgrace. Israel is a democracy surrounded by some of the vilest people on God's earth who would only literally a couple of days ago shoot dead in the head 6 hostages, just leave them there lying in a tunnel. And these people need to be taken out, and we need to supply helicopters, airplanes and drones to do it. And I think there's a misunderstanding that Israel is small and what surrounds them is big. There's a war going on. The terrorists are using their own people as shields and then using the PR of the fact that they are killed by the Israelis as a form of making Israel look as though it's the bad guys. The bad guys were October the 7th. It is, honestly, I can't understand it. The Labour Party has a long history of anti-Semitism. It was only literally half an hour ago that the race equality people were saying that it was a disgusting party for the way they treated Jews. And what is happening now is because Muslims in our country are flexing their muscles through their votes, which they're perfectly entitled to do, by the way. The pressure, the PR pressure from Islam within our country is now aimed at people who are doing their best when surrounded by their enemies. I feel desperate, for the Israelis.
Do you think that Labour, as a party now, is going to be guided in no small part by trying to keep the British Muslim community happy?
I'm absolutely certain of it. I'm certain that if they hadn't had these shocks, which took place on July the 4th, when the votes came in, and extraordinary voting pushes came from the Muslim community, they would not be acting in this way. What this is pure politics, and they're throwing Israelis to the wolves. It's shocking. People forget it is a democracy. Right? It is a democracy. Everything else that surrounds them is either a terrorist group or is funded by people in Iran who scarcely will not even allow their people to come out and say anything, you know, I'd like a cheese sandwich. Oh, I will shoot you. It's a shocker.
All right. Well, look, obviously Labour would say they've moved away from the days where they had a problem with anti-Semitism. Now, this is a corker of a story. This has your old newspapers' front page written all over it. So, a Labour MP has been exposed as a landlord renting out mould-riddled and insect-infested flats. He's sacked his estate agent. He's apologised to his tenants. Jas Athwal, the newly elected MP for Ilford South in East London, owns a rental portfolio including 15 residential properties where black mould, ant infestations, dodgy fire alarms were found. Mr Athwal says he was unaware of the problems. He's apologised unreservedly. Kelvin, he's accidentally become a slum landlord.
Yes, well, it's a disgraceful story. He knows full well what those houses look like. He knows full well he has not invested one single penny of his rent in there. And what makes me laugh, of course, is he is a member of a party which is supposed to crack down on this guy. So this guy says, nothing to do with me, Gov, despite the fact it's his capital. He's the guy that's receiving the rent. He says, this will not save him, because under Labour, of course, he's going to be in the most fearful amount of trouble. And he gives all landlords a bad name. And I'm a landlord. And I know whether there is mould or ants. There isn't, actually. They are perfect houses.
He says in very strong terms, look, I'm sorry, I didn't know about this.
I don't believe him. I don't believe him. Why should I believe him? Look, he has an agent, yeah? He has a busy job. But he knows when you have a certain kind of house, you know that house is either in good shape or is in bad shape. Why doesn't he go around and visit him? I go around and visit mine. Why doesn't he visit his?
He probably wouldn't want to catch something.
He probably wouldn't even want to meet the tenant. Now, this is the hypocrisy of the Labour Party. This is a party that's cracking down on genuine landlords, right, having genuine just investment propositions put to them. And one of their own, it turns out to be as bad as any that you could imagine. Honestly, Starmer, in his actions right now, it's no wonder he's going backwards in the polls. I hesitate to think where Starmer's going to be in 6 months' time.
Well, it's remarkable, isn't it? It's something we're going to talk about at the top of the next hour, actually, is as well his desire to continually ignore the wills of the people when it goes. Fascinating position, a fascinating time in British politics this, where you have a man who has unquestionably a huge majority.
He has.
That majority was based on a 33% turnout, where 9.5 million out of a population of 70 million people actually voted for him, and that number has now decreased. Of those 9.5 million people, it's hard to say how many, but clearly not all of them will still vote for him now. To have a massive amount of power politically, in a legislative sense, but almost no authority.
And he knows this, by the way. He says, you can pour as much bucket on me as you like. I'm not going anywhere. You've got 5 years of this stuff. 5 years of mould.
5 years of mould. Kelvin, thank you very much. Kelvin McKenzie, former editor of The Sun. Coming up, I'll bring you the latest royal developments. Prince Harry, he's plotting a return from exile from the US. But next, as the anti-immigration right-wing party, the AfD, is rising in Germany, is proving particularly popular amongst the young. Should Keir Starmer stop dismissing anyone who opposed open borders as being racist? Yvette Cooper has piped up. She's doubled down on the old racism claims. James Cleverly, to his credit, has hit back, but I just can't help but wondering, you know, how much longer can Keir Starmer keep calling everybody a far-right racist? Stay tuned.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. We've seen some big thunderstorms through the day today. Still a few rumbling on at the moment, but they are going to fade overnight. Tomorrow, a mix of sunshine and showers, and it is steadily turning fresher from the west. Quite warm and humid, though, in places at the moment. Our air is coming up from the south. This low pressure generating the heavy thundery showers, steadily clearing from northeast Scotland and then the Northern Isles. But some storms rumbling on well into this evening over parts of the Midlands, Northern England and Wales. They should start to ease through the early hours. Still quite warm and humid and murky over central and eastern parts, but turning fresher and cooler further north and west. Temperatures in parts of Scotland well down into single figures. Generally a fine and a sunny start across Scotland tomorrow as well. Certainly a much brighter, drier day across the northeast. But in western Scotland, a line of cloud and rain is creeping back in. That's extending down into Northern Ireland, so a pretty glum start to proceedings tomorrow here. Quite a lot of mist and low clouds still across parts of England and Wales as well, and still a few showers here, still keeping going through the morning, so you may wake up to a bit of a wet start here. And as we go through the day, we could see some further heavy showers developing over parts of East Anglia and maybe the far southeast of England. Still hit and miss, but some heavy downpours possible, particularly in the early afternoon. Much of northern England, Wales, southwest England, though, drier and brighter compared to today. And we'll still have some outbreaks of rain coming into the far northwest. Turning cooler and fresher, we could still get into the 20s across East Anglia and the southeast. And certainly a cooler, fresher start across eastern areas for Wednesday morning. Again, many places seeing plenty of sunny spells, but we will see more showers developing as we go through the day, particularly for Wales and England, Northern Ireland. Not too many, though, across Scotland. And temperatures much fresher feel by Wednesday, high teens for most.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
How would you like an extra £3,000 in your bank account each month for an entire year? Well, it could be yours with our £36,000 secret salary to be won. You'll get £36,000 in cash to do whatever you like with over the coming year. And the best news? It's totally tax-free, which means you'll get every penny to spend. For a chance to win £36,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB08 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 25th of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight,
we do need to have lower immigration. As you know, immigration is at pretty much the highest on record.
Starmer said immigration was too high when he needed your vote. Now,
I am worried about the far right. Through showing that there are progressive democratic answers to the many challenges we face is the way forward.
Well, he's got into bed with open border fanatics. Also,
he's explained to me and the House what the government's definition of Islamophobia actually is.
And we're actively considering our approach to Islamophobia, including definitions.
shock horror. Labour wants to root out Islamophobia. They don't even know what it is. Also,
and whether it's a knife or acid, whatever it is, and these are things that are a genuine concern for me. It's one of the reasons why I won't bring my wife back to this country.
Prince Harry wants to return to the royal family. Should King Charles tell him where to go? And
there's a strange noise coming through the speaker.
Really terrifying story. There's astronauts stranded in space, start hearing weird noises in their space capsule. What's going on? On my panel tonight is Express columnist Carol Malone, journalist Benjamin Butterworth, and ex-Tory party chairman Sir J. Berry. Oh, and can you tell me what happens next here? Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Is Keir Starmer an extremist? Next.
Good evening, I'm Will Hollis with your top stories at 10 o'clock. Transport for London has revealed it is dealing with an ongoing cybersecurity incident. TfL has not given exact details, but says no customer data has been compromised and that it's introducing measures to internal systems. The Home Secretary has committed to a rapid review of extremism on her return to Commons today. Yvette Cooper updated Parliament on the government's response to riots which erupted across the UK following the killing of 3 children in Southport. The Home Secretary referred to rioters as racists and calling them thugs. It comes as the wife of a Conservative councillor pleads guilty to publishing written material to stir up racial hatred. 41-year-old childminder Lucy Connolly called for mass deportations and attacks on hotels housing asylum seekers in a post on X on the day of the stabbings. She later apologised for acting on false and malicious information, as she called it. Lucy is the wife of councillor Raymond Connolly. In Israel, the country's Prime Minister has vowed he will make Hamas pay for the killing of 6 hostages in Gaza. Speaking at a press conference in Jerusalem, Benjamin Netanyahu said that Hamas will pay a heavy price for the hostage deaths, calling it a massacre. It comes as an Israeli court rules that a general strike shutting the country's economy must end. Israel's entire economy is striking in a bid to pressure Prime Minister Netanyahu into a ceasefire deal. Back in the Commons, the government has announced it is to suspend the sale of some weapons to Israel. Foreign Secretary David Lammy said 30 out of 350 arms export licences are due to end because they're a clear risk and they could be used in a violation of humanitarian laws. Israel continues to face international criticism for its war against Hamas in Gaza. And former Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn is to unite pro-Gaza MPs under a new banner in the House of Commons. The MP for Islington North forms the Independent Alliance with 4 others, creating a parliamentary group with the same number of MPs as Reform and the DUP. To the Tory leadership contest now. James Cleverly's launched his leadership bid today, vowing to bring back the Rwanda plan. Cleverly also highlighted the need for the UK to remake the argument for capitalism. Meanwhile, Kemi Badenoch launched her leadership campaign, calling for change in the Conservative Party. The Shadow Communities Secretary and contender to replace Rishi Sunak said her party has to focus on renewal. And finally for you tonight, the filming for the final ever episode of Gavin and Stacey has begun, says the BBC. The British comedy, which became a national favourite, will return to TV screens for a special for the last time this Christmas. And I'll have more updates for you in an hour, but for now it's back to Patrick.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Labour just don't get it, do they? Today, Yvette Cooper stood up in the House of Commons and said this.
Those violent and criminal attacks were not protests. They were not about grievance. They were thuggery, racism and crime. Plenty of people across the country have strong views about crime, about policing, about immigration, asylum, the NHS and more, but they don't pick up bricks and throw them at the police.
But to his credit, James Cleverly was very quick to point out a lot of Labour hypocrisy going on here.
Does she accept that any perception whatsoever of treating the same crimes differently based on the race, religion or community of the perpetrators increases tension rather than reduces it?
Yeah, there you go. He referenced the Labour response to BLM. They took the knee for it, etc. Well, the public are angry, and it's emerged that the taxpayer bill for illegal immigrants alone is billions of pounds a year. And Labour don't really seem to care. I mean, here's Keir Starmer taking literally the opposite stance to what most people want, talking about how, the solution to all of this is to be more progressive.
I am worried about the far right. I'm worried about populism and nationalism and the politics of the easy answer, the snake oil, if you like. And I think it's very important that we have a debate about how we confront that. My own personal view is that through delivery, through showing that there are progressive democratic answers to the many challenges we face, is the way forward.
Well, hang on a minute. It's progressives who flooded the continent with illegal immigrants, isn't it? It's progressives who allowed the ideology of Islamism to take hold. It's progressives who many feel have irreversibly changed an entire continent for the worse forever. And in a second, I'm going to mention what's going on in Germany. You'll see it on your screens there. And, the AfD, well, the latest figures in 2023, according to official statistics in Germany, the number of suspects for crimes rose by 7.3%. 41% of suspects were non-German nationals, which is astonishing, really, isn't it? There were 214,000 violent crimes, and if you have a look at the amount of suspects in that were non-German, it's not easy to understand why they would want to continue with that process as well. But I think these are the ones, for me, that are most sobering. The Germany-wide statistics on sexual violence are absolutely staggering. So an internal study by the German Federal Law Enforcement Agency that was leaked to a Zurich newspaper revealed that asylum seekers have committed 7,000 sexual offences between 2015 and 2023. And it's at this point that I'll remind everybody that our government here and the previous government refused to tell us, the British public or the media, the breakdown of crimes committed by asylum seekers or by nationality. which is quite staggering. But yes, let's have a closer look again at what's happening in Germany. They had a democratic vote where Alternative for Germany party won in the state of Thuringia. The progressive leader there tells every other party to refuse to work with them. That's not democracy. Liberal elites don't like it when people don't vote the right way. What is it about people on the left not wanting to accept democratic votes? Sir Keir Starmer knows a thing or two about that.
It's right that Parliament has the first say. It's right that Parliament has the first say. But if we need to break the impasse, our options must include campaigning for a public vote, and nobody is ruling out Remain as an option.
There we go. Second referendum, wasn't it? And now immigration is the biggest issue for 51% of people in Britain. That's the highest it's ever been. People point out that there's a problem in Britain with Muslim gangs who appear to not want to integrate and already, as well, become violent at a moment's notice. Labour, well, they just think you're an Islamophobe if you point that out, but they can't even tell you what the definition of Islamophobia is.
The Secretary of State please explain to me and the House what the government's definition of Islamophobia actually is?
A new definition must be given careful consideration so that it comprehensively reflects multiple perspectives and considers potential implications for different communities. And we're actively considering our approach to Islamophobia, including definitions.
Well, people on the left like calling other people extremists, but I do put it to them that if they're the ones ignoring democratic votes and ignoring public opinion and demonising people who oppose them and continuing to push an unbelievably radical agenda, actually, maybe they're the extremists. So that was my panel this evening. Our broadcaster and journalist Carol Malone. We have journalist and commentator Benjamin Butterworth and former Chairman of the Conservative Party, Sir Jake Berry, as well. Carol, do you think actually Sir Keir Starmer and all these pro-immigration people on the left are the extremists here?
Say that again, are they what?
The extremists.
Oh, God, yeah. And, you know, what's happening in Germany will happen here, you know, the rise of the far right. Because when mainstream political parties refuse to provide for or listen to the concerns of ordinary people, that's what you get. You get what you've got in Germany right now. And, you know, in Germany right now, since 2015, they have allowed in 3 million immigrants. Remember when Merkel led in 1 million and said, we can do this? Well, they did it. And 3 million people later, they've got a rocketing crime rate. Their economy is tanked. And the people are angry. And, you know, this guy Hock, I was just reading some of the stuff about him today. He goes around doing lots of straight arm movements when he's talking to crowds. One of his motto, there's a motto in Germany, and it says, everything for Germany. It's a Nazi motto that was used when the Nazis were in power, and it's actually illegal to say it in Germany. This guy is freely using it on the streets, and he's shouting that, you know, about the failure of multiculturalism, protect your children. And the people of Germany are sick of not being listened to on immigration. They're listening to the stuff that you've just read out there. They know it's happening, and they're angry. And, you know, the reason I think reform in this country is doing so well is not because it's far right, nowhere close to being far right, but because it's the only party that's listening to people about immigration. And Starmer did not say a single word about immigration in his speech last week. Not a single.
All right, just on that, you know, these stats out of Germany are absolutely staggering. And to be honest, it's not difficult to understand why the AfD have done quite well over there. So in 2023, there were 761 gang rapes registered in Germany. That's almost 2 per day. And according to these stats, which again apparently are official stats, 47.5% of the suspects were foreigners. I mean, if you've got a problem with that, you would have a look, Benjamin, wouldn't you? And you think, who's done that in this country? Well, it's the progressives, isn't it? And Keir Starmer wants to ally himself with the progressives. That's surely a mistake.
I mean, I don't think anybody should celebrate what's happened in this German election. And to answer the question of do I think it would happen here, well, you know, Britain is notable on having never had a far-right surge, and I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. But I think there are 2 problems, and one of them is the fact that, you know, this is mainly in East Germany, which is considerably poorer than the West, and I think people having a stagnating quality of life, not having good public services, that is often what drives them to have a problem with this.
And 3 million extra people, of course.
Yeah, at a much faster rate than the UK has had. What I think is the problem is that you have to be careful that if these people coming over, regardless where from, don't assimilate, and it feels like they're sort of imposing another culture, then that is when you have a problem. And I think it is naive to ignore that, because Britain has loads of examples of successful multiculturalism, but the ones where you don't see that are the ones where people that move here don't change.
I think there is a sense, and I get this from talking to people out and about and just living, really, that we are actually at a point where unless something is done now, the tipping point could really be reached when it comes to the idea of multiculturalism and assimilation, all of that stuff. I think there is a sense of urgency, perhaps, now, because things, under your party, to be fair, Jake, went so badly wrong, as you have acknowledged. But Keir Starmer doesn't appear to want to do that, does he? And we are in a situation now where we don't know the amount of crimes that are committed by people who just arrived in this country. We won't be told that, unlike in Germany. And if they're anything like what we're seeing in Germany, then this is an absolutely astonishing figure.
Well, it's astonishing that we don't get told. I actually think there's a real public interest in knowing those figures. Just to look at this in a bit more detail. So, first of all, what I found extraordinary about what happened today is this idea of two-tier care, two-tier policing that was pumped out as some sort of conspiracy theory. We were talking about it. We talked about it quite a lot. We had a lot of discussions on this panel about it. Some conspiracy theory over the summer. Now, Parliament has come back today, and James Cleverly, the Shadow Home Secretary, I beg your pardon, has come back and said, actually, no, there is evidence that we do have this two-tier approach by the Labour Party, whether that's Keir Starmer taking the knee or, in fact, Jess Phillips. You showed a clip of it there, of that violent gang who threatened a journalist, slashed their tyres on the car.
Man's head in outside a pub.
And Jess Phillips said, well, it's fine because they came along to protest against some EDL people. That is a Home Office minister. Her duty is to uphold the King's peace. She has condoned violence on our streets. What has Keir Starmer done about it? Absolutely nothing. She is still in her job. So the first thing is this two-tier policing, which was a conspiracy theory, now isn't. Parliament's come back and they've said it true. And the second thing is, all politicians, as far as I can tell, Keir Starmer, I think my party did when they were in government, has turned a tin ear to the British people. Over 50% of people now in the UK say that immigration is the issue they are most concerned about. And politics and politicians are putting their fingers in their ears and saying, look, we have to be progressive. That's not what Britain's like. We want to continue with this mass immigration. It needs to stop. The British public does not want it.
What I will also say, and it's a very difficult thing to confront this, right? Well, you know, we don't shy away from this kind of stuff on this show, which is, if you do really want to try to prevent the rise of a serious, hardcore, dangerous far right, the worst thing you can possibly do, I would argue, is ignore millions of people who've got very legitimate concerns about immigration.
And what's happened, I think, it happened under the Tories, and it's more so happening under Labour, is that decent people are being made to feel that they're racist for daring to question the amount of numbers coming here. And it's not racist to be worried about uncontrolled immigration. It's not racist to be worried about insecure borders and people that are coming in here unvetted. We don't know who they are. That's not racist, but people are being made to feel that it is. So when a party like Reform comes along and says, you know, we're hearing you, we'll listen to what you say, we will put a stop to this, people immediately jump on it. And Reform are gaining ground now against Labour, right now.
The point is, we are, in this country, creating effectively a city the size of Birmingham every 18 months.
2 cities.
With legal and illegal migrants. Look at Birmingham. How many hospitals does it have? I think it's got 11, actually. There's over 400 GP surgery. There's over 800 primary schools. There's 600 secondary schools, whatever it is. Unless we are building infrastructure at that rate, what does it mean with all these people coming into the country? It means you can't see your GP. You have to wait hours in A&E. Your kids can't get in your preferred school. And that is what makes people say, this isn't racist. They say, I cannot access services because the government is letting so many people in and we are failing to build the infrastructure.
Can I just ask something to you, Benjamin? Because it's, you know, we're seeing a lot of this at the moment where people blame, you know, the rise of extremism on, you know, voices on Twitter or prominent political figures or on Nigel Farage or on all of this stuff, all right? And they say they're the problem, they're the problem, they're the problem. But if Keir Starmer does absolutely nothing about illegal immigration or legal immigration, which as it currently stands he's not doing, and in fact as it currently stands he's openly said that he would rather take the quote-unquote progressive approach, which as far as I can tell means more of it OK? Would he not actually have to bear some responsibility if there is a rise in the far right in Britain?
Well, the problem of the far right, it would be a mistake to ignore that. And intelligence service leaders have said for some years that there are more people on their watch lists from that than from Muslim extremism.
Not more. They said it's the fastest.
That's not true. But what I'd point out is that there are two questions here. And one is that Germany, a lot of the people they've taken in have been refugees from Islamic countries with big cultural differences. And I think it'd be a mistake to pretend that those don't exist. We have a problem with, you know, sort of Wahhabi Islam in this country, a more extreme sect. And if we ignore that, then we don't solve anything. But on the flip side, a fifth of workers in this country were not born in the UK. It's more than £80 billion to the UK economy. So when you talk about public services, you have to be honest that immigrants to this country put in 12% more than they take out. So what would the cuts be if you got rid of immigrants?
You know, if we dare to suggest in this country that the upsurge in crime is because of some of the immigrants are coming in, we're shouted down. But Germany now has the proof that, particularly with sexual offences and violent offences, that is the case.
Stark.
And it can't be ignored.
It's stark, and people have a right to be worried about that, especially if some people who've come to this country have passed through Germany.
Women have a right to be worried because culturally they feel very different about women. We all have a right to be worried.
All right. Well, look, thank you very much, everybody. Now, coming up, bit of a shift in tow. Stranded astronauts are spooked by mysterious sound in space.
There's a strange noise coming through the speaker.
Yeah, what's all that about? I'll reveal all after I bring you the very first of tomorrow's newspaper front pages. But next, remember when Prince Harry made this bold statement about the UK?
And all it takes is one lone actor, one person who reads this stuff to act on what they have read. It's one of the reasons why I won't bring my wife back to this country.
OK, well, apparently now the runaway royal is literally, as we speak, plotting a return from his self-enforced American exile. The Mail on Sunday's editor-at-large, Charlotte Griffiths, she's got the inside scoop. She's next.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQs Live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQs Live here on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
I'm not saying I don't want to be a mum, and I'm not saying I don't want to work, but it's definitely not easy.
It's just really tough for us mums, you know. Our job's never done, our work is never finished, and I think it's this movement, the real out-of-office movement, is something that just really resonates with me, and I think we should all talk more about how much work we do. I think a woman's work is never done, but I just think we all feel guilty. We have that mum guilt, you know. If you're working and being successful, you wish you were at home with the kids, and if you're at home, you're thinking, am I doing enough work?
Yeah, and of course the cost of childcare in this country means that a lot of families just frankly make that decision to have one of the parents stay at home, usually the mum, and they're just being squeezed out of the economy, and that's not good either.
Once you've done your job as a working mum, you come home and you're doing another 8 hours on top of it.
Mothers have a tendency, definitely historically, just to crack on with it. It's just something that they are expected to do, that they do without moaning, and now it's like...
Are we getting to a stage where it go down that well? In my experience, I have had someone say to me, well, if you can't handle it, why do you have kids? you know.
Absolutely, absolutely. And yeah, exactly that. We just need to talk about it, and I think it's healthy, and I think that's the main thing now, that we should be brave enough to be able to say, do you know what, sometimes it's difficult, but I'm really proud to be a working mum, and I tell my daughters that. I work really, really hard, and it's a good work ethic for them, you know, and that's what, you know, this campaign's all about.
Is there some resistance still, do you think, from some parts of society?
I do think there's resistance, and that's what this is about, is to try and get people talking about the fact that it has been awkward in the past, and some people don't understand a working mum's life, and that's why we need to try and talk about it.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Patrick Christys tonight, only on GB News. Now, the Mail on Sunday has exclusively revealed that Prince Harry has sought advice from his former aides on how to plot a return to the UK. The Duke of Sussex has reportedly grown tired of the advice given by his American PR expert and is now consulting trusted former aides from his old life in a bid to rehabilitate his image in the UK. Reports also suggest Harry and Meghan are not seeking a permanent return to the country, although friends of the Prince have dubbed the plan Operation Bring Harry in from the Cold. It's catchy, isn't it? Well, here's what Prince Harry had to say when he was asked about bringing his wife back to the UK in July.
And all it takes is one lone actor, one person who reads this stuff to act on what they have read. It's one of the reasons why I won't bring my wife back to this country.
So joining me now is the editor-at-large at the Mail on Sunday and the person behind this exclusive story at Charlotte Griffiths. Charlotte, thank you very, very much. Come on then, what's going on?
So what I'm hearing is that Harry wants to be able to sort of move through UK circles again and come to the UK in a way that he doesn't have to sort of bury his head in the sand, come in and out in 45 minutes, come in cloak and dagger. He wants to be able to come to his old country where he's from every now and again and it not be a huge, great big deal. And I think he also cares about what we think about him a little bit, you know, the British people, that is, because what I'm hearing is he's starting to take advice from people that aren't Hollywood reputation managers, that aren't all those people he's been going through. You know, he's got a very high staff turnover at the moment. He's sort of recognizing that what he's doing now isn't quite working. I mean, could be the understatement of the century. So he's turning back to his old life and thinking outside the box a bit and thinking, what worked when I was back in the UK and who can I consult and chat with and have conversations with from that life who can help me as I move into, you know, a new chapter.
OK, all right, fine. But why does he need to consult people over that? I mean, isn't it blindingly obvious that, you know, unfortunately, a lot of people in Britain don't particularly like Meghan, they don't particularly like the way he treated the King or Prince Philip in their dotage. And, you know, the die has been cast for Harry, really. Is there any way back, do you think? I mean, presumably King Charles would have to have something to say about this.
I think Charles will always think there's a way to forgive his son. I think the tectonic plates are shifting slightly. I'm talking sort of very early stages here, but I just hear mood music that's less vitriolic towards Harry. I mean, not from the general public, but from his friendship circles, maybe even some family members, that actually it can't go on like this for decades and decades, where he's this complete exiled persona non grata. And one person did say something that's quite interesting to me, which is, and for the first time I've heard something sort of along these lines from anyone in his circle, they said, listen, his intention is kind of faultless because he intended to fall in love, start a family, have a fresh start. You know, those are all kind of honourable aims. But of course, as we all know, he went about it in the most catastrophic way. But it's interesting that some of his friends are starting to sort of see that kind of element of the stories, that, you know, it started with good intentions.
Do you think there's any indication whatsoever that he and Meghan might be drifting apart slightly? I mean, if he's saying he couldn't bring her back to the UK, I wouldn't want to bring her back to the UK, but appears to be simultaneously making some kind of attempt to restore relations with the UK. I mean, can we read anything into that, do we think?
I actually don't think you can read anything into that, because one thing I wasn't hearing was that he's about to pack up his bags and move over to the UK from Montecito, and I was quite careful to include that in the piece. And I know that he is genuinely so worried about her safety, as you would be if your mother died. But I think there's a certain amount of recognition that, you know, he's had a whole new PR team for months now, and that's not working. He's lost 2 of them in very recent weeks. He's just realised it cannot go on like this. This bad reputation, staff turnover. It's not necessarily to do with Meghan, but to do with moving forward, trying to start afresh, trying to find a new way to. I mean, nobody wants to be hated.
No, well, of course not. But in order to do that, though, there would have to almost be a tearing up of some of the Queen's final wishes, really, which is that he can't be half in and half out. And so I suppose King Charles, and dare I say it as well, William, would have to ignore the wishes of our late Queen, wouldn't they?
Yeah, well, I mean, in my piece, I was saying he wants to move back through UK circles, re-ingratiate himself in royal circles. I don't think he's going to be ribbon cutting for William and Charles in the immediate future. But some of his friends were talking about, discussing what it might look like, what a world might look like, where Harry maybe was doing duties again. And, you know, who's to say that that can't happen one day? But I certainly don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. I don't think there's that much willingness from Harry. But I think he really does want Charles to look favourably upon him again, and he does want to be able to come over here. So I think, yes, I don't think there's any chance William's going to let him back in, half out. And I think they will respect their mother's wishes. But there is a bit of a recognition on his side that it'd be nice to spend time with his family again. And of course, that means sort of being a royal when you're in the UK, rather than being a complete exiled nobody that's just ignored by his own family.
Indeed. Well, look, thank you very, very much. That's Charlotte Griffiths, the editor-at-large of the Mail on Sunday, who got that scoop and will no doubt be getting many more scoops exactly like it. Thank you so much. You take care. Now, coming up, should we be concerned about Jeremy Corbyn and 4 other pro-Gaza MPs forming an independent coalition in Parliament? We'll debate that soon. Plus, yes, these astronauts that have been stranded in space for quite a while now have started to hear weird noises in their space capsule.
There's a strange noise coming through the speaker.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions being asked about what on earth that is, and we'll do my best to explain it to you a little bit later on, but I will be bringing you the very first look at tomorrow's front pages next, so stay tuned.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. We've seen some big thunderstorms through the day today. Still a few rumbling on at the moment, but they are going to fade overnight. Tomorrow, a mix of sunshine and showers, and it is steadily turning fresher from the west. Quite warm and humid, though, in places at the moment. Our air is coming up from the south. This low pressure generating the heavy thundery showers, steadily clearing from northeast Scotland and then the Northern Isles. But some storms rumbling on well into this evening over parts of the Midlands, Northern England and Wales. They should start to ease through the early hours. Still quite warm and humid and murky over central and eastern parts, but turning fresher and cooler further north and west. Temperatures in parts of Scotland well down into single figures. Generally a fine and a sunny start across Scotland tomorrow as well. Certainly a much brighter, drier day across the northeast. But in western Scotland, a line of cloud and rain is creeping back in. That's extending down into Northern Ireland, so a pretty glum start to proceedings tomorrow here. Quite a lot of mist and low clouds still across parts of England and Wales as well, and still a few showers here, still keeping going through the morning, so you may wake up to a bit of a wet start here. And as we go through the day, we could see some further heavy showers developing over parts of East Anglia and maybe the far southeast of England. Still hit and miss, but some heavy downpours possible, particularly in the early afternoon. Much of northern England, Wales, southwest England, though, drier and brighter compared to today. And we'll still have some outbreaks of rain coming into the far northwest. Turning cooler and fresher, we could still get into the 20s across East Anglia and the southeast. And certainly a cooler, fresher start across eastern areas for Wednesday morning. Again, many places seeing plenty of sunny spells, but we will see more showers developing as we go through the day, particularly for Wales and England, Northern Ireland. Not too many, though, across Scotland. And temperatures much fresher feel by Wednesday, high teens for most.
Join me, Nana Okoye, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Arlene Foster on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. I've got the very first of tomorrow's front pages for you, so let's do it. I'm going to start us with The Guardian. UK breaks with US to suspend 30 arms export licences to Israel. Now, in the last few moments, the US have spoken about this, and they have said that they are very disappointed with Britain. The quote that is the killer quote, as it were, is that the US say that we told them that we weren't going to do this. And Starmer and Lammy then did it anyway. So it is remarkable, that. I think we'll talk about that in more detail in a second. The Mirror go with Keir versus Oasis. Starmer proposes a clampdown on Gallagher's dynamic pricing. Can I just politely suggest to Sir Keir Starmer, he's already got himself into an almighty row with Elon Musk, that maybe, you know, getting into a row with the Gallagher brothers is probably not the best thing to do.
Nationalise Oasis.
Nationalise Oasis. Right, the Metro. Missing Jack parents ransom hoax ordeal. So, student's anguished mum reveals trolls' vile tricks. So this is the mother of a student who vanished 6 months ago. She says that trolls have tried to cash in on the family's trauma by claiming he was kidnapped, demanding a ransom. It's a horrendous story, that. Let's go to the Daily Mail. Now Labour are running scared over winter fuel backlash. They say they still won't hold a vote on the winter fuel payments. We have covered that already tonight, so we won't dwell on it. Let's go to the Eye. UK restricts sale of weapons to Israel due to a clear risk of breaking international law. The British government has suspended dozens of arms licences to Israel over fears they will be used to breach humanitarian law in Gaza. The Telegraph's got an interesting front page. Petrol cars rationed to meet eco targets. Firms cannot supply vehicles that people want because EV quotas force them to limit sales. So drivers in Britain will face a shortage of petrol and hybrid cars as manufacturers ration vehicles to avoid large net zero fines. Car makers are delaying deliveries until next year amid fears they'll breach quotas set by the government for electric vehicles. So there we go. I'm just going to bring my panel in now. Look, just on the UK breaking with the US. So the US government, you know, which I need to remind people is still, well, allegedly the Biden administration anyway, are angry with us over doing this. Jay, what's your view on this?
Well, I think this is a shameful day in British foreign policy. Not only have we abandoned our allies Israel, who, let's not forget, were subject to a vile terrorist attack, and are also a democracy surrounded by a sea of autocracies which want to destroy them. Not only have we abandoned Israel in their hour of need, but we have also at the same time damaged relations with our strongest ally, the United States of America. This is pandering to the left wing of the Labour Party. This is gesture politics of the worst kind. And I think, really, there will be serious international repercussions for the UK.
But Benjamin, you know, on the day that Jeremy Corbyn and his cabal of wrong'uns really have formed this new independent grouping, these 5 MPs who between them have some incredibly fruity views about Gaza and about Jewish people at times, etc., etc. You know, on the day that that's happened, David Lammy and Keir Starmer decided to essentially side with that side of politics over Israel and with America.
I don't know that they're siding quite with people that extreme, but I think the bigger regret about it happening today is that the 6 hostages who were murdered were being buried today. And so that's an incredibly poor look, that just as the Israeli Defence Forces have done the miracle of getting them back and of saving people last week, and then the horror of them being killed, showing how appalling things are there, that the UK would do this. I think it's not good to antagonise the US, but I am always, you know, I can't help but think the US being annoyed with a democratic decision by our government is our right to do it, and we shouldn't be the lapdog just because they're annoyed. I don't really think that's qualification enough. And it's worth noting that there are 350 arms involved in this and only 30 are affected by the ban. And so, you know, I don't think the UK is abandoning Israel. I do think that, you know...
That makes it gesture politics of the worst kind,
but
doesn't
what we are doing is limiting Israel's ability to defend itself, which we have absolutely no right to do. And Lamy is already in trouble with the American administration. I mean, if Trump gets into power, you know, in November, he's not going to deal with Lamy. He's already said he won't. So he's actually storing up trouble. But you're right. This was on the day that the funeral is a gentleman called Hirsch Goldberg Pollen. He was buried after being executed by Hamas, and that's in violation of international law. And yet Lamy is very obviously taken aside, not on.
Can I just also focus on this as well now, which is Labour's plans to adopt an agreed definition of Islamophobia have been slammed as a threat to free speech, branded blasphemy laws by the back door. They've also been called weak and cowardly, actually, because they appear to have been giving in to a group called the MuslimVote.co.uk. So should we be concerned that Angela Rayner couldn't even define Islamophobia herself when she was pressed on it by Lee Anderson in Parliament today?
The Secretary of State, please explain to me and the House what the government's definition of Islamophobia actually is.
A new definition must be given careful consideration so that it comprehensively reflects multiple perspectives and considers potential implications for different communities. And we're actively considering our approach to Islamophobia, including definitions.
Right, so, Joe, they don't know what it is.
I've stood at that dispatch box and read out, well, I never did, been given answers by civil service, meaningless answers to read out by civil servants. Angela Rayner, apparently the great sort of debater that she is just being spoon-fed her answers by civil servants. I think the Labour Party's in a bit of trouble with this definition of Islamophobia. I know what it means. It's like any other form of racism. It's hatred of people because they happen to be Muslim. It's completely wrong. But if you look at the definition the Labour Party, and particularly that Muslim vote, want them to adopt, it does sort of stretch into any criticism of Islam whatsoever being regarded as racist.
Joking about it.
Here, on the home of free speech on GB News, that's something we should be really concerned about.
No, it should be, and it's something that, frankly, I think, you know, if it does overreach, then it would be almost impossible to stick to.
She probably had a bit of a brain freeze, having spent the weekend partying in Ibiza. Probably couldn't get her thoughts together.
Probably was a bit of a come-down for her, Benjamin.
Look, I don't actually think that a government minister should be coming up with the definition at the dispatch box. It would have been more problematic if
she ought to know it.
If she'd invented it there on the spot. Well, no, it should take a lot of consultation to decide something like that. It is basically...
It's not decided anything, have they?
The gist of it, at least the very gist of it, not a whole load of meaningless words.
Absolutely key policy announcement, you would have thought that she'd have a better answer than that.
Well, I suppose she's they're working. It's a work in progress. Is really what she says.
Come back to us in 5 years' time.
We'll see. We'll see about it then. But there are concerns about the overreach because look, you shouldn't needlessly criticise anything for the sake of it, clearly. But at the same time, you can't have anything that remotely resembles blasphemy, and also you can't have anything that bans you from joking about something. Just generally, in the same way that people joke about Christianity, or I mean, entire comedy sets have been built off the back of that. If that, results in you falling foul of Islamophobia laws, then something's gone a bit wrong there, hasn't it? But just to whiz us on to something that's quite literally out of this world, NASA astronaut, and can I just say they're always called something like this, aren't they? Butch Wilmore has reported a strange noise coming from the stricken Boeing... Don't say anything. Boeing Starliner space capsule that he and his colleague, Suni Williams, will be stuck on for 6 months longer than they anticipated. So here is the interesting call that they gave back to base earlier.
There's a strange noise coming through the speaker.
All right, Butch, that one came through. It was kind of like a pulsing noise, almost like a sonar ping.
Yeah, I'll do it one more time, and I'll let y'all scratch your heads and see if you can figure out what's going on. Here we go.
So you're stuck in space for 6 months longer than expected, and then all of a sudden that noise starts coming through the speaker.
Yeah.
They still don't know what it is.
You think you're about to come hurtling back through the Earth's atmosphere.
Yeah.
It's when you hear that sort of noise in, like, a decent sci-fi movie.
Yeah.
That's normally the point that someone's
end.
just about to die.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think someone at Amazon has already got the script for the film. I mean, but apparently I looked this up because I was like, how are they there for 6 months longer when, you know, they weren't planning to be? So they sent up food parcels to the ship so that they can still survive that. But I think you'd be absolutely terrified.
Of course you would. You're completely at the mercy of literally everything up there, aren't you? But we do wish them well. But, yeah, like I said, the noise, that weird noise, has not yet been traced. The Starliner spacecraft has been dogged with issues. It's now said to return to Earth on autopilot this month, so fingers crossed, without Wilmore and Williams, who are stuck in space. That spooky sound until at least February, so they're just up there. Good luck, guys. Coming up, James Cleverly pledges to restore Britain's immigration deterrent.
I will use my contacts and my reputation with Rwanda to resurrect that incredibly important partnership.
Is that the right idea? We're going to debate that next, but I've got a couple more front pages for you before all of that, so I'll see you in a second.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Protest flags are banned at the Proms, the last night of the Proms, as audience members are told that they will be confiscated.
Yes, so the Proms website says flags from prescribed groups and flags related to protest, hatred or advertising will not be allowed in the auditorium. Well, we're joined by royal broadcaster and historian Rafe Hadelman-Koo and the broadcaster and social commentator Iman Ayton. Rafe, should it only be the Union flag and other flags of our nations that are allowed to be waved at the last night of the Proms?
Well, I certainly think we shouldn't be having any protest flags. You know, it's important to have somewhere in our public life that isn't overtly political. Every other public space seems to have been taken over by politics. And the whole point of the last night of the Proms is to unify the nation. It's not an official event like, you know, the King's birthday, but it's unofficially a chance for us all to actually come together and have a bit of fun about our great history and celebrate all of that.
Mom, what do you think of what Rafe's just said there? Surely we shouldn't have protest flags. The Proms is supposed to unite people.
It is always about unity, but in order to achieve unity, we do have to include all of the different opinions and thoughts. And so when we think of protests, like protest flags, I don't even know what that is. It's just people advocating for what they believe in. Well, I think it's really important to just focus on the first and foremost point, which is that we're talking about classical music here. Let's not act as if this is British, it's European.
You know, if you want to protest, you can just walk outside the Albert Hall, cross the road and go to Speaker's Corner in Hyde Park and have your protest there. The Albert Hall is for classical music.
Everywhere.
It's a treat and it's a great British tradition.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back. I've got a couple more front pages for you here, so let's crack on with those. I'm going to start this round with the Daily Express. Brutally honest. The Tories need to stop acting like Labour. This is Kemi Badenoch blaming the loss of voter support on talking right but governing left. And, well, there is quite literally some truth to that, isn't there? But let's go to the Times. Labour puts limits on arms deals with Israel. That's dominated the vast majority of the front pages for you tomorrow. The other one, really, which is on a couple of them, is this: Labour to tackle dynamic ticket prices, but some say it's too late. I mean, this is the idea that Labour are now looking at this particular reaction to Oasis tickets. I think I'm right in saying about 14 million people trying to get Oasis tickets. And then when people have queued up for hours, then Ticketmaster decided they were going to basically double the price of standing tickets. Look, it's not ideal, and I am deeply... I mean, I say this as someone who queued up and didn't even get to the page where I could have even paid double, which I would have done, actually. But, yeah, I mean, I don't think the government should be getting involved in this, really. Just found that a bit odd. Just leave it alone. Leave it alone.
They're an overrated pub band, aren't they, really?
No, I wouldn't have that, Carol. But they can't jump on every single little thing like this and go, well, that was a bit of a scandal, let's regulate it.
But, you know, on the Oasis case, log in 30 seconds later and you're 100,000 places back in the queue and you could be charged double for exactly the same thing. You know, it's like Uber pricing or, you know, those apps.
It's demand, though, isn't it, mate? It's demand.
But I think it's able to take advantage of people in a way that's you know, a bit exploitative.
I really don't get it, though. I don't get it.
I do, and I would just like to take this opportunity to say that for anyone who is watching who wants to sell an Oasis ticket to me, I am willing to pay really silly money.
This is shameless.
So
this is shameless.
Bring it to me. Get in touch.
You're not on the friends and family list.
I'm going to whiz us along. Go on my own. Right, I'm going to whiz us along now because earlier today, Shadow Home Secretary James Cleverly launched his leadership bid properly. Really, he said this about the Rwanda scheme.
I will use my contacts and my reputation with Rwanda to resurrect that incredibly important partnership.
I must say I was a little bit surprised that he went as big on that. Is resurrecting Rwanda the right thing? Because bear in mind that is a bloke there, James Cleverly, who never denied calling the Rwanda scheme bat poo.
I think the problem is with James there, and he's a fine individual, it sort of strikes me that he's talking about the past, not the future, and I think the real debate about the Conservative leadership election should be who can shape the future of Britain, not refight the last general election. He's a great guy, I just don't think that was the best launch I've ever seen.
Carol, your views on that?
I think Rwanda is the wrong word. I don't think if we're going to have that kind of scheme where people are processed offshore, it perhaps shouldn't be Rwanda, because that's the one that triggers the left. That's the one where they're still thinking 30 years ago, genocide, whatever. We need to get somewhere that isn't Rwanda and get a scheme working.
Also, you know, what's that going to... So we're talking, what, in 5 years' time, we're going to be back having the Rwanda debate again?
We're not, and that's why it's the wrong thing to do, because we're not going to be talking about that.
We need a deterrent. I mean, I think everyone can agree we need a deterrent.
What is it going to be?
There's so many of these people trying to be Tory leader, and they want a pretty small electorate of yeah, it's a lot. A pretty small electorate of Tory members. They're trying to trigger something. They're trying to make them feel like they're the right-wing candidate. James Cleverly isn't particularly right-wing, but I think he's trying to use this to look
what
like
I think is interesting is that comment by Kemi, which led on the front of the paper, saying, you know, it's not good enough to talk right, but then govern left. Well, in fact, when Kemi was in the cabinet, in fact, all of these candidates, they talked right and voted left when they were in the government.
Well, we're going to watch this. We'll watch this leadership debate very, very closely, as you would expect here at GB News, and see. But it didn't light a fire. I was on the show 12 till 3 p.m. earlier today, and I will be covering that again tomorrow as well. And we had the Kemi speech, and we had the James Cleverly speech. And I always keep an eye on the GB News inbox during these things, and it did not fizz. It didn't fizz. I don't think people are that bothered at the moment. But anyway, moving on. Now, fans of the Harry Potter franchise typically gather at King's Cross Station every 1st of September to celebrate Back to Hogwarts Day, like completely normal adults. Now, the day in J.K. Rowling's fictional work, the Hogwarts Express sets off from central London to the Wizarding School. Usually, the station makes a special announcement directing the Hogwarts students to platform 9 3/4. And as always, the Potterheads gathered en masse. But take a little look at what happened. Nothing happened. Nothing happened. They all got there, dressed like wizards, stood there, shouted at a message board, and nothing happened. Apparently, they were even told to not bother travelling to the station because there would be no announcement. So, I mean, it's pathetic.
The crowds do get pretty crazy for that thing, though. I mean, if you were a commuter, you'd be annoyed.
It's a non-event this year because the Labour Party's put 20% on the school fees at Hogwarts, so no residents can afford to go anymore.
That's it, isn't it? And that is it. All right, OK, so it's time to reveal today's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. Now, Carol, I'm going to start with your Greatest Britain, please.
Right, now, mine are to all the Brits who are taking part in the Paralympics over in Paris. It's getting nowhere near near the coverage it should have had. I want to salute the courage of these people. Halfway through, we're doing pretty good. We're number 2. We're second. China are first, we're second, the US third. We've got something like 49 medals so far. You know, every athlete, every Olympian trains like demons, but I think disabled people have to have a little, they have to dig deep for a little bit extra, and these guys are. So well done.
We got 12 golds in one day.
I know.
It's extraordinary.
Incredible.
Remarkable, isn't it?
It's not getting the coverage it should get either, but anyway.
Go on, Benjamin.
Greatest Britain?
Yes.
Is Angela Rayner. The raving Deputy Prime Minister. I think it's fantastic. You've got a real person in office. She looked fabulous.
She did not look fabulous.
Angela Raver.
Yeah.
She did not look fabulous. Do you know, she wore the same dress to a meeting in the morning in Westminster, and she still had it on when she went clubbing in a different country at night time in Ibiza.
What a legend.
That's not good, that. She hasn't changed that frock all day. It's not good.
Well, anyway.
Have that on at 9 o'clock in the morning.
I don't think there are many grandmas that go raving in Ibiza.
And to raise the tone, I'm going to go for Maddie, a golden retriever in Northern Ireland who has been loving up, I don't know, encouraging the local bin operatives, what we used to call bin men, and her family have been filming this, and it's gone mad online, and people in Brazil and China and all around the world are looking at Maddie, greeting her. Being a bin man or a bin person is a difficult job.
So she goes up to the bin people and she says, hello.
She's only got her own high-vis vest.
All right. The winner are the Paralympians who are doing so well for Team GB. Right, we're going to have to be quite quick with this. Who's your Union Jackass, Carol?
Prince Harry, contacting all day, trying to find a way back to royal duties. This is the man who was told years ago about the Queen he would not be able to be half in and half out. That's exactly what he wants to do now, locate royal duties. The King should tell him no way.
OK, Benjamin.
My Union Jackass is Jeremy Corbyn and the Gaza gang. They've formed a party of 5, which is how many MPs Labour would have had if he'd continued to be leader. But I don't think we need those kind of extreme politics getting more representation.
All right, go on.
And very quickly, Labour Secretary of State for Education, Bridget Phillipson, has abolished the Parents' Bible, which is the Ofsted one-word summary of your school. They probably got rid of it because they don't like the fact that the Conservatives left more good and outstanding schools than the Labour Party's ever managed to achieve. But as a parent, I say this is what we look at when we're looking at what school our kids go to. It's vital, and it's just taking away choice from parents.
OK, all right. Well, today's winner of the Union Jackass is Jeremy Corbyn. So Benjamin Butterworth has a rare victory here.
I've waited months.
The lefties on the panels have figured out the way to do it, right? They have, they nominate things that are unavoidable,
Or nominate the viewers or you.
Or my grandma or something, Yeah, there we go. Anyway, right. Well done, everybody. Lovely show. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you to you at home or on your radio or however you're consuming this particular piece of content right now. It is much appreciated. Every viewer counts. I'll see you tomorrow. Take care.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. We've seen some big thunderstorms through the day today. Still a few rumbling on at the moment, but they are going to fade overnight. Tomorrow, a mix of sunshine and showers, and it is steadily turning fresher from the west. Quite warm and humid, though, in places at the moment. Our air is coming up from the south. This low pressure generating the heavy thundery showers, steadily clearing from northeast Scotland and then the Northern Isles. But some storms rumbling on well into this evening over parts of the Midlands, Northern England and Wales. They should start to ease through the early hours. Still quite warm and humid and murky over central and eastern parts, but turning fresher and cooler further north and west. Temperatures in parts of Scotland well down into single figures. Generally a fine and a sunny start across Scotland tomorrow as well. Certainly a much brighter, drier day across the northeast. But in western Scotland, a line of cloud and rain is creeping back in. That's extending down into Northern Ireland, so a pretty glum start to proceedings tomorrow here. Quite a lot of mist and low clouds still across parts of England and Wales as well, and still a few showers here, still keeping going through the morning, so you may wake up to a bit of a wet start here. And as we go through the day, we could see some further heavy showers developing over parts of East Anglia and maybe the far southeast of England. Still hit and miss, but some heavy downpours possible, particularly in the early afternoon. Much of northern England, Wales, southwest England, though, drier and brighter compared to today. And we'll still have some outbreaks of rain coming into the far northwest. Turning cooler and fresher, we could still get into the 20s across